Hello team, it's the end of February. I don't know how that happened. I did some witchy things. I read a lot. It's another wrap up. We'll come back to the cauldron. In case you didn't know, my name is Monique. This is Bookwitch Reviews. Today we're going to talk about what I read in February because I somehow read a whole hell of a lot. Keeping my glasses on and on. But we're going to run with it. There are quite a few books to get through, so let's get to it. The first book I finished in February was The Sisters Grimm by Men of Prague, which I will put here. Basically, this is a magical realism book that is just... I didn't like it. I felt like it was very predictable. It is about 4 girls who are sisters with different mothers. They sort of like live in this world where there is an alternative universe called Elsewhere, I think, or Everwhere, I'm not entirely sure. And before their 18th birthday, they sort of remember again that they have these sisters, and then they have to make a choice about good or evil. And it just, all of its good parts just sort of like were cancelled out by a whole lot of glossing over some intense trauma, and I just didn't like it. It started off as 2 stars, and now it is 1 star, and I am never going to talk about it again because it annoys the shit out of me. Yeah. The second book that, thankfully, for fucking God, that I read in February so I didn't enter a slump was Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which doesn't come out till September. I'm really sorry that you don't get to read this yet, but if you haven't read Gideon the Ninth yet, which is the first book in this trilogy, which is called The Locked Tomb, I would highly suggest that you do, because it is amazing and weird. It's necromancers in space. I have spoken about it in a couple of videos, and I will speak about it again. Gideon Nav is basically on a planet in like a sci-fi dystopian universe, and she is trying to leave the 9th house, which is the planet that she's a part of. And somehow she doesn't get to leave it. She gets dragged into this quest of becoming like the Necroprime Lord's new guards, or like leaders, or whatever they are, and everything that can possibly go wrong in this process goes fucking wrong. We also have Harrow, who is beautiful and is the focus on the second book especially, and there's everything that if you read this book, it just tears your heart out and keeps it, and you want Tamsin Muir to like softly stroke your face and pretend that everything's gonna be okay, and it's not. The third book I read in February is The Wolf of Orignal by K.S. Valenzo, which came out on the 3rd of February, I believe. I got given this as a NetGalley ARC. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I did enjoy big parts of it. This is apparently a self-published, indie published book that has been picked up by a traditional publisher and is now getting like reprinted. The book follows Talia, I'm not entirely sure how to say that, as she sets out to bring her wayward husband back home, because basically they were meant to be crowned together because their countries have been doing civil war stuff, and now they wanted to like push them together. They got married, they had a son, everything was good, and then the day before they were meant to be crowned, her husband runs off and no one really knows why except for maybe Talia, and she sets out to find him because he sends a letter saying that he would like to negotiate like some sort of truce coming back thing. And this book is beautifully written. It has some really intense and really cool sort of like looks at politics and character development, but I thought a whole lot of it was very like bland, and a lot of the side characters are like very one-dimensional, and I felt like some of the like big cataclysms for the pacing just went very like and then and then I really wanted to like Talia, and I just did. She just annoyed me. She made a lot of really bad choices, and just... So it's a 3.5 stars, so generally good. I would highly suggest that you pick it up, also just to support a self-published author who's now traditionally published, because yay, that's not what we want. But yeah, like, okay, it's great. Okay, so I read The Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell, which is the sequel to Carry On. I am so stoked that I finally got to this book, and then I'm really, really excited to say that I fucking loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars, almost 5. The only reason why it wasn't quite 5 is because the ending felt a little bit rushed, but I have been told that there are now more books in this series coming out, and I am super excited. I can't really explain to you what Wayward Son is about, but I can tell you that Carry On is a beautiful sort of self-parody idea of Harry Potter, but it is more than that. It is a male-to-male, enemies to lovers romance. It is sort of like this stupid look at like the chosen one trope, and I love it so much. It's so silly and very characteristic and very much like that feeling of like, you remember if you read fan fiction back in the day? That's what Carry On feels like for me. And the next book I read, Denier Witch by Wee Swab. And I am super thankful for the fact that Bookstagram sort of took me onto the journey of finding out who Wee Swab was, because I have never read her before. And this is her debut book, which got reprinted this year. It's sort of like this classic fairy tale warning story, but set in a deeply intricate like setting that has like a lot of character, and then it follows this one girl who sort of ends up setting out to save these children that are beginning to disappear from this little village out in the middle of nowhere. And you don't really know what this village is. All you really know is that nothing ever changes in there, and there's this like talk about witches, and there's these witch sisters, and I really loved like the characters and the way that the story was told. I didn't quite believe in like the romance, and I always feel like that romance that just gets stuffed down your throat is just a little bit, but it was still a 4-star for me. And I read on my library app The Wicca Light by Mary Watson, which is the companion novel to The Wren Hunt, which I read last year and was super surprised about. So this is like magical realism, young adult, and it's this book. So The Wicca Light deals a lot with grief and family and sort of like connecting with who you are and connecting with your roots and connecting with where you live, and it sort of brings in a lot of the like initial story from The Wren Hunt, so I don't want to ruin it, but basically The Wren Hunt is magical realism, young adult, follows Wren, who is a part of this druid society that lives alongside regular humankind, and apparently hundreds of years ago, the druid classes sort of split into 3. So the bards, who are extinct, the arguers, which Wren is a part of, and the judges, which are the ones who are like the strongest. And apparently the arguers and the judges just hate each other and do a lot of fighting, and Wren sort of ends up sitting in the middle of this and tries to like bring power back to her people. And this book is so weird. I was on a complete magical realism trip at the end of last year, and this book just took me so much by surprise, because I started reading it and thought, I won't really like this, and then I really did. It's just this Mary Watson bright feelings and like humans as very intricate human like humans as humans, you don't say, Monique, and very intricate characters, and I just really loved this book, and I really loved The Wicca Light, which is why I also gave it 4 stars. There were some things that I was a little bit like, why? Like the ending. The ending is a why for me, which is why it went from 5 to a 4. It's like, why? Next up on my list is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, which came out on the 20th of February. I really like this. I really looked forward to this. This is another NetGalley arc that I got to review, and I really want other people to pick it up. I do say right now that it has some issues, and these issues have been pointed out already, but I still think that you should give it a shot, because this book is just so wonderfully weird. It's like high fantasy, epic, and almost like portal magic, and all of these different worlds that are connected by something called a maze, and you go on these ships and you like travel through the portal, and you follow Causeway, who I think this is the way you say it, I'm not sure. I think I read somewhere that it's meant to rhyme with doorway, Causeway, but she's an orc priestess who was meant when she was like 6 or 8 years old to be sacrificed to this death god, and then this wizard sort of comes out and pops out of nowhere and says, I can save you if you come with me, but you owe me. And so she follows him, and we go on almost this quest, and there are gay babies everywhere and friendships, and I'm just like, I spoke about this in my 5 anticipated releases for March, because I wanted a 5th book, and I think I explained it better there, but it's it's weird, and the reason why it's weird is because it's the pacing. So we follow Causeway for like I can't figure out her name. We follow her like for years and years and years. So we start out, I think she's 7 or 8 or maybe a little bit older, and then we jump like 3 years, and then we jump another 5 or 10 years, and it's a clunky sort of jump, and there's a whole lot of world building which I adore, but it also makes it very hard to sort of like follow on occasion. We follow a lot of different characters, and it's just that becomes a little bit so I can understand why some people didn't like it. Next book that I did read in February was Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. I've spoken about this already. This was one of my February witchy reads. I'm super excited for the fact that I have finally read this book. This book is a young adult or new adult fantasy following 2 girls, Isolde and Sapphi, who are like thread sisters. So they are bound by friendship together. And basically, Sapphi is part of like the nobility, but she has left that behind her for some reason. And they get into some mischief. They get like snuck onto a boat, and there's a blood witch after them, and it's all very intense, and it's just beautifully written, and I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. It's exciting, and I cannot wait to read the next book. And just honestly, I would highly recommend this. It's super cute. There are currently 3 books in the series, and I think there may be a 4th one coming. I'm hoping. But also look at this stunning picture. To the 9th book that I read in February. This is A Witch Child by Celia Reese. This is a book told in diary installments from like the early 1600s of a witch girl who travels to America to sort of like avoid getting burned or hanged. And I want to read anything that says witch on it. So, but I understand why this is given to people in like school, because this is my girlfriend's copy, and she read this way back in like middle school, something school. I don't know how English schools work. Well, the book I read was Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. Such a weird name. But in this story, this historical fiction story, we follow Briseis, who is a survivor of war, and Achilles, who she gets given to, and it's just like Greek mythology and mankind, and the fact that in this story we follow the women behind like the old Greek story, like the old Greek heroes, and I understand why we need books like this, but I was so angry when I finished it, which I think is purposely done, that it's meant to make you angry, but I was also angry at the pacing and the fact that this story is meant to be about the girls, and it felt like it was still about Achilles, and I think that's purposeful, is the fact that Briseis feels like it was never her story, it's only Achilles' story, and it was beautiful. It was beautifully written, and I'm really happy that they didn't go further into like the very intense sexual assault and the very intense like violence that was done against these women. But I also felt like it missed something, which was why it was a 3-star for me. So it was, yeah, okay, yep. And the last book that I finished in February was The Winterwood by Shea Earnshaw. This is a crate edition. It is a young adult magical realism book. I read a lot of these this month somehow. It's just like I didn't read a lot of my like chunky high fantasy books this month, which is why I also think I've read so many, because these books, and I read quite fast. These books easily, if I don't really have anything to do when I come home from work, I can finish one of these like in a day. But basically we follow Nora Walker, who is from a long line of Walker witches who have this intense connection to a part of the forest which is called the Wicca Woods. So I'm a little bit about like, why is it called the Winterwood? It's called the Wicca Woods. But anyway, she finds a boy who was lost 2 weeks earlier, and he can't remember how he got lost. But he was found in this Wicca Wood where she apparently can go once a month and find something that others have lost. And this book and this setting is stunning. There is some truly beautiful sentences in here and some amazing writing, and I want to know more about the Walker women, because they're like these weird kind of witches, and there are these little in between like chapter bits that tells the story of one of these Walker women, and I love that. I want the whole story to be about that, but then instead we get a forced little romance, and that gets like pushed into your face there, and it's just, it's so classic YA that it has to be about romance. And I don't know if that's because I just want gay romance and I will take that any day, and I feel like that sort of makes me like I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite, but I wish this book was more about Nora and less about the boy. And also, I saw the ending a mile off and that annoyed me, but I still have this very beautiful, beautiful book, and that's what matters. But I am currently reading Scavenge the Stars by Tara Sim. This is another Owl Crate book. It's a short, little, cute... I thought it was sci-fi for some reason, and it's not. It's just fantasy, and it's a revenge story about a girl, and it's apparently a retelling of Monte Cristo, and I'm about 150 pages in, and I'm a little bit over halfway, and I don't really feel the Count of Monte Cristo, really. But I think I did really well. I had February Witchy month. I read quite a few witchy books. I loved it. I had a 5-star. I had 3 4-stars. I had 5 3-stars and 1 1-star. And we won't talk about that book again. Also, these are really happy. Those are the 11, almost 12 books that I read in February. I'm rather proud of myself. You should be proud of yourself too, no matter how many books you read, because some weeks / months are just faster than others. Let me know down in the comment section how many books you read this month, or if you like wrap-up videos, or if you would rather that I talk about these books in another way, because I am open to any suggestions, because I am an easily entertained small bean and I like comments. Also, hit that like button and the subscribe button at the same time. 2 clicks for you, happiness for me. It will make us all very happy and we can all be friends. I also have links to all my social media down below if you want to follow me on any of those. And I will see you all very soon. I love you. You're doing great. Goodbye. I'm excited for the next book to come out. I need to stop saying excited. I have other words than one.